Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Multispeed Technologies, the Ask Noah Show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour to be a part of the program. It's a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624, or send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalai. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you as another episode of the Ask Noah Show kicks off this hour. Southeast Linux Fest was a blast, and if you haven't had a chance to listen to the coverage that we brought to you live from Southeast Linux Fest, I suggest you check that out. Now, we were live, we planned on being live all 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We did our initial episode at Southeast Linux Fest on Friday, where we talked about how Jupiter Broadcasting became the first open source company to do high-quality professional video entirely on Linux. Now, that was an article I wrote for opensource.com, and it tells the story of how Jupiter Broadcasting started to broadcast entirely on Linux, how we switched our entire studio over to Linux, and how we switched our entire remote broadcast over to Linux. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, I will have a second article that is going to detail the technical details of how we set up to broadcast entirely on Linux. Now, the interesting thing about that technical talk is I actually already gave that presentation at Southeast Linux Fest this past weekend. And so if you were a remote attendee, you paid the $5 to get the talk, then you're able to download that now. And if you were not a remote attendee, then that talk will be uploaded and available to you on YouTube as soon as the fine folks at Southeast Linux Fest have time to process that and upload that. Again, open phones this hour, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. Now, Saturday's episode was the small business episode. Sorry, I'm just responding to a message to my my call screener. So Saturday's episode was our small business episode. And in our small business episode, we actually took you through some different small business ideas. We took some questions on small business, and we brought in some small business owners and explained to you exactly how they got their business running and what makes them successful. We talked to a very interesting gentleman by the name of Keith Perry. Now, Keith Perry works for a small technical company in Philadelphia, and I was later chatting with him and the rest of his team, and he was telling me that their finance guy, of all people, is one of the people that actually does the most conversions to Linux. And the way that he goes about that is he attacks it from a financial perspective. So he, who knows, I guess, not a lot about Linux, or at least so I'm told from his colleagues, will walk in and say, hey, you know what, this computer over here, you should use a GNU cache instead of QuickBooks. And it's not even necessarily, not necessarily the right answer for those particular circumstances. But he's so convincing, he's such a likable guy, and he's so passionate about his belief system that he legitimately is able to convert a lot of these people to Linux. And that's fantastic. Again, open phone lines, 1-855-450-NOAH, 855-450-6624. I want to expand a little bit on the small business thing because it's interesting. What I was really hoping I could do is find some real world examples of how if you're able to serve people well, if you're able to do things well for people, then you'll serve your clients well, and you'll end up making a lot of money. I want to go to the phones. Looks like some of these calls are not screened, so I'm just going to take them one by one. Good evening. You're on the Ask Noah Show.
Noah?
Hi. What's up?
In two parts. I need a script that tells me if there's media in the optical drive. It just tells me if it's there or not. And two, would you mind to shoot me off how you convert DVDs to ISO? I'm sure using something like DD, but I'm not familiar with DD too well.
Yeah, for sure. What now? When you say you want to detect if there's media, you want to know if there's media in the drive, or you want to know if the drive is available?
Yeah. I want to know. I haven't been able to figure this one out and been all over the net. Is there media actually in the drive? I know what to do when there's media. Is to detect it that there's something there. I can use like ISO info to get me the information I need, but I don't know of a reliable way to say there's actually some media in the device at this time.
Gotcha. And you just
I haven't found a good solution for that.
Gotcha. And you just want a script to do that?
And if you wouldn't mind sending me off how you convert your DVDs to ISOs if you're using DD command. I'm not familiar with it. I'm assuming you're a command, like me, kind of a commandish line most of the time, and otherwise graphical other times.
For sure.
Yeah,
I can. So I'll take the DVD question.
That command at all.
Yeah, I'll take the DVD question right now. I'll answer that for you right here live on the air, and then I'll go and we'll put together a script for you, and we'll email that out. Just do me a favor, send an email to live@asknoahshow.com, and that will make sure that we get back to you on the script issue. As far as converting DVDs to ISOs, the simplest, most straightforward way that seems to work 100% of the time is to use Brasserio. Either Brasserio or K3B. Either one of those programs, you put the optical disc in the drive, you open up the software, click on the button, and it will almost instantaneously convert the disc to a ISO. I've used that numerous times, never really had an issue. Now you can go one step further if you'd like. You can use something like Make MKV to turn it from an ISO into the actual video files. The issue with doing that is you lose all of the menu structures. Now that might not be important to some people, but I can tell you without any equivocations that my media library is an exact identical replication of my DVD/Blu-ray library. There's absolutely nothing that exists on my media library that didn't exist on the original DVD or Blu-ray. That includes languages, that includes all the special features, that includes all of down to the copyright warnings. All of that stuff exists on the media library, and so that's how I would suggest you back up your media. Jeff calls from Vancouver, British Columbia. Hey, Jeff, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hey, Noah. I had a quick question about connecting a Linux college lab to Windows Active Directory.
Okay.
So my college uses Windows for everything, and I was asked to find a way to connect a Linux lab that is being built to the Windows Active Directory. The research that I have done has shown that SSSD and Kerberos is a viable option. It's just I just need a sanity check. Wondering if there's a better way to go about that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. This might be a little pie in the sky, but it would really simplify the answer to your question. Is there a possibility of swapping out that Active Directory controller?
No, there's not.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Oh, that's okay. So those are the cards we're dealt. So according to Red Hat, I was actually talking with one of the people from Red Hat about this last year, actually, at Southeast Linux Fest, and they're doing it through Kerberos. If they have a Windows environment and they are tasked with getting one of their Red Hat machines to connect into an Active Directory environment, they're doing that with Kerberos. So that's the direction I would go. Now, a full disclosure, Jeff, I have not connected a Linux client to a Windows domain controller. I'm not the reason that we would leave a domain controller in place would be for user management, group policy management, those kinds of things. Typically, if it's not doing one of those kinds of things, we'll take it out of production altogether. And if so the first order of business is to try to get a Linux server in there, and then usually we have swapped the Linux servers out long before we've ever put the Linux clients into place. So I personally don't have a lot of experience connecting Linux clients to Windows Server infrastructure, but Kerberos would be the way to go if I was going to go that route.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for the call. Again, open phones this hour, 1-855-450-NOAH, 855-450-6624. The email, live@asknoahshow.com. There is some drama brewing, and I'm going to try to break this down for you as best I can without spreading any FUD. In the past, we've talked about alternative Android ROMs. Now, these are alternative software packages that you can flash your phone with, alternative operating systems that you can install on your Android-based cell phone, and eliminate a lot of the problems that you have with Google. What do I mean when I say problems with Google? Well, there are some privacy concerns because Google is well known for invading people's privacy. You can extend your battery life. When I installed one of these alternative ROMs on my Pixel, my battery life went upwards of a week without Google Play services there. And so there are a number of different reasons why you might want to install an alternative ROM, and we covered a couple of them. One of them was Copperhead OS. Now, Copperhead OS is an alternative ROM that provides a security-hardened experience as a replacement for Android on their supported devices. And we had recommended Copperhead OS and told you that it was a great operating system, and to this day I believe that. In fact, we had one of our listeners actually send in her phone to Altispeed Technologies for us to flash it for her with Copperhead OS. Now, it turns out that the particular model that she sent in wasn't a supported model, and so we weren't able to accommodate her. However, as of today, it sounds like that was a really good thing because Copperhead OS has had some major issues recently. In order to understand these issues, we have to break down exactly how the code for Copperhead OS is licensed. Now, Copperhead OS is what's known as a source available code. So, source available means that the code is available to the public, but there are certain stipulations about using it or replicating it or modifying it. So it's not open source. And in order to piece this story together, because it kind of came out all over the internet, and then due to some of the legal resources that Copperhead OS, the company, had, they tried to remove some of that discussion that had occurred online. And so I had to go to cache pages to pull back up some of those discussions and pull some of that information back off. We have a very detailed show notes for you this week. All of those resources will be available to you at podcast.asknoahshow.com. So if you want to read these for yourself, we're going to provide them for you. I guess I should make the following disclaimers. I have no way of personally verifying that the people that are posting on these forums are the people who they claim to be. It seems to be largely accepted by the internet community as a whole, which lends a lot of credibility towards me, because if there's anything I've learned in broadcasting on the internet, it's don't lie on the internet. Every time I see somebody who makes up a story on the internet, they get sussed out like that. And so the fact that nobody on the internet has called Bolsheviks on these guys makes me think that this information is legitimate, but just understand that this is all taken off of forum posts and multiple forums at that, so that I could piece all of this story together for you, so I could try to bring you the most accurate coverage that I can. So Copperhead OS is a source available project, and so Daniel, the lead developer and really, the founder, I guess, of the Copperhead OS project, says, quote, "The code is completely public on GitHub. It's mostly licensed under GPL2 for the kernel and a non-commercial usage license for the user space code, although I can change that for the subset that I own. The code is a mixture of code owned by myself and code owned by Copperhead." So he's referring to Copperhead, the company. "It's primarily under a non-commercial license, so neither myself nor Copperhead can legally use the project as a whole commercially. The major issue with this is there isn't any clear division between these parts. It's not possible to move forward without an agreement, which is clearly not going to be happening. I attempted to do this as an open source community project. It was only me working on it, and I tried to do the same with a Linux hardened, which barely got off the ground and hardly has any changes implemented. It doesn't work," end quote. So that was, each one of those blurbs was taken from a response in Reddit, and one of them, I believe, was on Hacker News. And all of this has come to light because of an email that James Donaldson, who is the CEO of Copperhead, the company, sent to Daniel, who is the lead developer and really the founder of the project. The email reads, and I quote, "Daniel, it pains me to send this. Your actions over the last few weeks have been entirely inconsistent with your obligations to the company as an officer and as a fiduciary. You have breached your duties to the company and act in the best interests of the company and to maintain the confidentiality of the company business. As a result, the company is hereby suspending your employment with the company with pay, stipulating on you signing in an employment agreement and discontinuing your access to the company-controlled platforms. As previously and repeatedly requested, you are forthwith provide the company with access to all company materials of which you have access to. Messages in reply on @Daniel Micay, which is his personal Twitter handle, and on the subreddit r/CopperheadOS. You are similarly expected to immediately discontinue use, publication, reference, or all other use of company name and logo. You are prohibited from discussing the confidential business with the company to outside parties, including clients, that are not your legal advisors. Should the company suffer damages as a result of your actions, the company shall take all necessary steps to recover those damages from you. Now, where to go with this? I guess the first thing is so let's start with this. The Twitter handle that is Daniel's personal Twitter handle started out as the Copperhead Twitter handle, and then he changed that. So the argument that has being made on the internet is that Sean should, he's being asked to give up his personal Twitter handle, and he's being asked to give up his private messages inside of Reddit. And that's not entirely accurate. It may be accurate for his Reddit username. It is not accurate for Twitter. If you go back and look at the cached Google documents, you can actually see that Twitter has the username that he is using now. His Daniel username formerly was the Copperhead OS Twitter name. So the majority of those followers were there to follow Copperhead OS, and just because he didn't distinguish between his personal life and Copperhead OS, that's not now becomes Copperhead OS's problem. That should continue to be his problem. Now, as soon as this happened, as soon as this email went out, the very next thing he did was he went to Twitter to say that he had used a ATA erase, which is basically a function built into SSDs to erase his hard drive. And I want to take a minute to explain exactly how ATA erase works, because I think it's a good lesson in and of itself. All SSDs, by default, are in fact encrypted. You may not be aware that it's encrypted, but every SSD made is encrypted. It has a private key, and basically, when you provide power to that SSD, it uses the private key and decrypts your data, and at the hardware level, and then the drive is simply exposed to your software. So you may never know that encryption decryption is taking place. What the ATA erase command does is it deletes the private key. So the data remains on the SSD at the hardware level, but it's encrypted, and so you can't actually access the data because you've deleted your own private key. And this is in response to the fact that we didn't previously have a good way to erase data on SSDs. Traditionally, what we do with spinning disks is we would write all zeros to the drive, all ones to the drive, all zeros to the drive, all ones to the drive, all zeros to the drive, all ones to the drive. And if you flip those bits back and forth enough times, the assumption was, and what works out in practice, is that drive is effectively, the data is gone. Well, SSDs have something called wear leveling. And so essentially every time you want to write data to the disk, it tries to store it on chips that haven't previously been written to, or the ones that have been written to the least. And what that does is it allows the SSD to, quote unquote, wear more evenly. And the problem with that is when you tell it to write all zeros, all ones, all zeros, all ones, you can't actually tell the SSD where to write, because that software is writing to different chips on the drive itself. And so it's very difficult, and not to mention it really, really, really wears down your SSD to write all zeros and all ones. And so this function of this ATA erase and this built-in encryption was built. And so he tweeted that he actually used this ATA erase to erase the private keys, the signing keys. And so he writes, and I quote, "It's not possible for them at this point to create updates without my signing keys. You could disable the updater app, but it doesn't really matter. James," that's the CEO of the company, "did seize control over the company's infrastructure, but he can't make signed updates by me, so users are safe from whatever nonsense he would try to do. I already wiped all 4 sets of hardware containing the keys, so now there is no way to make a valid update. I can't do it. I can't be forced to do it. If this was a state-sponsored attack or something like that, it has been thwarted. It was certainly an attempt as a hostile takeover of the project, and it has failed. So basically what Daniel is saying, Daniel being the lead developer, is he's going out and saying, okay, listen, if these guys tried to steal, if they're trying to take over my company, I force them to fail. And then he says something interesting. He says, if this was a state-sponsored attack or something like that. And so I believe what he's implying here is that maybe the federal government came in and said, look, we went to Google and we said, we want access to all these people's phones, and they gave it to us. Then we went to Apple and said, we want access to all of these people's phones, and they gave it to us. Now we're coming to you, Copperhead OS, and we want access to all of your stuff so we can spy on users. And of course, the lead developer, the guy who founded the project based on security and privacy and all that, of course, he would never agree to that. So they go to his business partner and they say, you're the reasonable type. Would you be willing to do that? And if he had said yes, and again, this is all speculation. I have nothing to prove any of this other than a offhanded comment that Daniel, the lead developer, says. If that had happened, Daniel says he's taking the necessary steps to ensure that users are safe. So then I started to look, what does Daniel Donaldson, what does the CEO of Copperhead, the guy who has initiated this entire, situation, what does he have to say? So I found a post from him. And this was later, I believe it was later deleted, and this is one of the ones we pulled from one of the cache pages. I'm James Donaldson, the CEO of Copperhead. We're hoping there is a peaceful resolution to this. It's very unfortunate that Daniel Micay is airing our dirty laundry. In internal confidential documents that are directed towards him, ironically from an @Gmail account, as he refuses to answer his @Copperhead.co address now, I especially, from a company asset, @CopperheadOS, that is damaging to Copperhead, the company, our users, and its employees. As it stands, Daniel Micay has been and still is a majority shareholder in Copperhead. I'm interested to an open discussion regarding these issues. Feel free to email me. Now, I have a couple of problems with that post. So the first is, I also would like to know why a man who started a company for privacy and security enhancement and all of that, and he develops this entire system for Android, just a replacement for Android, just to get away from Google and the Google sphere, and then he apparently doesn't want to check his work email address. He only wants to use his Gmail account, the account that's run by Google, the very company that he's trying to thwart. So that's curious to me. But I guess I could understand if you have a company and you know things are going awry, perhaps you move off because you don't want to be on company resources because they could seize that. But then the other thing that I have an issue with, if you want to have an open and honest discussion, why would you do that over email? That doesn't seem very open at all, unless we're going to start a mailing list on this. He's responding to this. This James Donaldson is responding to a post on Hacker News. Why not just answer the response? So one internet user replies on this Hacker News forum, and he says, Daniel Micay is literally the guy behind Copperhead. He is the author of overwhelming majority of commits to Copperhead OS repos and almost single-handedly maintains the hardened Linux kernel. Quite literally, open any repo, and then he gives a link to the Copperhead repo, or https github.com/CopperheadOS, and look at how much the Stinger, and that's Daniel Micay's username, has been working on all of this. What you're doing is despicable. It is unfair. Please resign. So then we have James Donaldson. He replies and he says, thanks for your feedback, but that's not going to happen. Copperhead exists because of our hard work, and your inability to understand that displays your inability to understand the situation. Code does not sell itself, and companies exist to support employees and users, not to attack each other on a public company account. Okay, so let's break that down for a second. First of all, there are plenty of projects that don't have a lot of PR, that just have really good code, and they become quite prolific, actually. So I don't really agree with that first statement. Second of all, your inability to understand the situation. Well, for better or for worse, he has not explained the situation. Now, I'm not saying there aren't other factors, there aren't other mitigating factors. Maybe there is a really good reason to let this guy go. But don't tell me, or anybody else, that we don't understand the situation if you're not willing to explain the situation. You could just say, there are things you're not privy to and I'm not going to explain them. But don't tell me you know, your inability to understand that displays your inability to understand the situation. That, to me, that those two things don't jive. Now, I started looking for Daniel Micay's answer to that because, okay, so there is a fair point in there, right? Like, if the Copperhead OS project was started for its users and has its users' best heart or best interests at hand, then obviously deleting these keys means that all of these users have essentially useless phones. Like, it's almost worse than having Android on them right now, because now you have to deal with the fact that you're not getting any updates. And if his tweet is to be believed, there is no human being on the face of the planet that can push updates to these phones now. So in a couple of months, they're totally host. So he effectively dive bombed his own project. So I started to look for an explanation as to why did you do that, Daniel? On Twitter, DEFCON Security, user DEFCON Security writes, before you do any damage, this is in response to his tweet that he's going to ATA erase all of these private keys. Before you do any damage, think of everyone that has paid for a service. This is being dealt with the wrong way and completely unprofessional. I am your biggest fan, but this is wrong. I've given you my word that it can be sorted out amicably, but this way can only end one way. Think. And Daniel responds. He says, yes, they paid for a product which included a commitment to protecting them from the fallout of a situation like this. I had an obligation and a commitment to protect these signing keys at all costs and to destroy them if I felt they were at risk of compromise, which I certainly do. Now, that actually kind of makes some sense to me. I'm a principled person. I'm the kind of person that would cut his head off to spite his face every single time. I have a strong set of beliefs, and if I ever felt like those beliefs were at jeopardy, I'd absolutely die. The number of times that Altispeed Technologies has made a poor business decision on paper because the statistics don't support my personal beliefs. When we go out on a limb and say, here is this XYZ service that users could buy for X amount of dollars a month, and here is the privacy, security, open source solution that doesn't have these features, and they would have to pay for the infrastructure and run it themselves and pay us to manage it and all of that. On paper, it's very difficult to justify one business decision over the other. And I've done it time and time again because I have a personal belief, and I would rather follow that personal belief at all costs, even if it means costing me my company. And so far, at least, it's worked out really well. And thanks to the launch of the Ask Noah show and thanks for the publicity at Jupiter Broadcasting, we've only gotten more stable in those beliefs, and I've only sunk my teeth in further. But I understand that kind of commitment, that kind of thing of saying, listen, I am called to a higher, not to steal a James Comey quote, but I am called to a higher loyalty. I'm not loyal to the project. I'm loyal to the idea of privacy and security. So, so Daniel, he expounds, he continues on, he says, Copperhead could have been enormously successful if, this is back to the forum post, Copperhead could have been enormously successful if James hadn't sabotaged it so much. He always wanted to concentrate on figuring out ways of earning money with minimal work, and has always been against selling to individuals rather than solely licensing to businesses. We could never see eye to eye on this, or anything else like licensing, pricing, etc. And I just gave in to him in most areas while keeping things going since I wanted to try anyway. It's falling apart like this has been coming for a long time. I never could have predicted that he would betray me like this, but it's not unexpected that it would fall apart due to our strained relationships and inability to work together. I thought that if I failed, at least I would be in a situation where I could continue to use my free time for the updates, but that isn't what happened. Now, I'm not here to pass judgment on Daniel or James. I'm not part of the Copperhead OS project. I've never been to a Copperhead OS meeting, and I'm not privy to any company documents other than the ones that Daniel has posted online. So, to steal a line from Wendell Wilson, I'm just some bozo on the internet. I don't know what happened, and I don't want to take a side, but here's what I do know. Number one, at least one of the parties appears to be able and willing to share information and have a discussion in an open forum. The second, the other party seems to only want to have a discussion behind closed doors. And I'm left asking myself, why is that exactly? Why is that? Why doesn't he want to have that discussion out in the open? Now, full disclosure, I wouldn't have that open discussion at Altispeed. If I had a disagreement, I'd cut whoever it was loose and I'd move on with my day. And there's a difference here because we support open source, but at the end of the day, it's my name on the building and it's a benevolent dictatorship. This is a community of one, and it's not a community project. I make the decisions. If you don't like it, I'll help you find the door. And that model works for our customer and client base because we gave them our word that we will provide them a given service at a given rate. And they can either trust us, they can trust our reputation, or they can go elsewhere. And I don't care which one well, that's not true. I do care, but I don't care to the point that I'm going to compromise in the way that I think this place should be run. Copperhead OS is an entirely different boat. First of all, their branding is fundamentally tied to the idea that Google has repeatedly and continually abused their customers' trust. So their product is modeled on this idea of openness and trust. When there's a disagreement of the controlling parties, it is absolutely appropriate for the users and potential customers to be made aware of that internal dispute. And I don't know about you guys, but I'd much rather read the raw, dirty laundry than some PR blurb that has been carefully fine-tuned. And that's not me saying I like drama. We're covering the story because it's literally what everybody on the internet is talking about today. But my biggest point, and really the reason that we're talking about this story, and how I'm going to try to spin this into as positive light as I can, is that it fundamentally and perfectly exemplifies something I have said since day one of this program. Keep your code open source. I'm going to say that one more time for the people in the back of the room. Keep your code open source. Instead of this idiotic dance of, well, the kernel is false, but the userland it's source available, just slap a GPL code sticker on the whole thing, throw it up on GitLab, and you'd be fine. Do you know what would have happened in this situation had they done that? James could have run Copperhead, Daniel could have run Nickelhead, and the user base could decide which project they want to support. Now the project is dead, Daniel's out of a job, in all likelihood James will be out of a job because Copperhead, the company, is about to die. Why? Because nobody can issue updates to the system, and so now the entire software project is dead because nobody wanted to give up their precious code. And to me, that's really sad. Again, open phones this hour, 1-855-NOAH, that's 855-450-6624, the email live@asknoahshow.com. Raymond is calling. Hey, Raymond, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Hi, Noah. Thanks for taking my call. I called in a couple of weeks ago regarding a question, but I have an additional question. A couple of weeks ago, I updated my Ubuntu. It's a VM guest running on VMware Workstation 11, and now when it boots up, all I get is a black screen. I'm not sure if I was running Ubuntu 16 or 17, because I think I installed it back late in the fall. Any thoughts on how to interact with it again?
Yep, see this all the time. It's a pretty straightforward fix. Essentially, what you do is press, go into a terminal, and here's what I would do. I'd restart the computer, and
I can't get to a terminal, but anyway.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I understand. I'm going through that in my head. So restart the computer, because you restart it, then you at least can see grub, right?
No, it shows checking like the file system that gets some data. It says Ubuntu, and then the next screen it just goes black. Don't see grub, just black after the initial stuff on the screen.
You've lost me now. So it's running a file check system. It's running a file check system before it even tries to before it tries to boot. No, we're missing. We're missing
I'm not
something.
Sure.
We're missing something here, because that can't be, because I'll tell you why. Because the EFI system, EFI or BIOS, doesn't matter, is going to hand off. It has to hand off to a bootloader, so you wouldn't be able to execute. It wouldn't be able to check the disk unless grub was working. So grub might be. Maybe it just doesn't show anything that says grub. It just shows, like, maybe you see like the Ubuntu splash screen or something like that.
Yeah, so I see a Ubuntu splash screen, then the next screen is all black. And I can't.
Yep. Okay. Good. Okay. I'm back with you. Okay. It's what. Okay. So here's what we do. So when you see that, so hold down. Let's see. I think it's the Shift key. Let me double check here. Yeah. Go ahead and hold the Shift key, and when the computer boots up, you're going to see. Then you'll actually get a grub menu, and one of the options is going to be edit boot parameters before actually booting. And so you scroll down to that menu. If you don't see that, the other option you might see in Grub is you might just see Lubuntu and then the version, so like Lubuntu 16.04. So you'll highlight that, and then at the bottom you'll see it'll have a little guide, and it'll say, press E, for example, to edit the boot parameters before booting. So you press E and go. It doesn't matter if you understand what all of those kernel parameters are, but just go all the way till the end till you see the word quiet. And right before the word quiet, go back before the word quiet and insert the term no mode set, NOMODESET. And then make sure there's a space between no mode set and quiet, and go ahead and boot the system. And if that fixes your problem, and I'm 99.999% sure it will, then what you'll do, then you can open up a terminal and modify your grub config to persistently have that no mode set in there. And I can have step-by-step directions on how to do that in the show notes. But I see this problem, I'd say, once every 2 months, and every time the answer is the same: add no mode set, and it boots right up.
Okay, sounds good. You have time for my second question?
Absolutely, sir.
So you had mentioned, ironically, about CopperOS, and it sounds like that's a train wreck right now. But basically, you didn't mention a phone that I could run it in. Now, I've gone and looked at XDA, and I looked at a lot of other places, and the phone I have never comes up for being able to put an independent Android version that I could have and do what I want with it. So on a 6-inch screen or 6.1-inch screen. Any thoughts there?
Yeah. Okay. So you're looking to purchase a phone, or you have a phone that you would like to run some alternative ROM on, and you're currently not finding one that's supported?
Both. So the first would be, since mine is so old now, it's a Galaxy Note 4 running version 6 point something. It's rooted. I'd be willing to buy a new phone that I could run, the newest version of Android possible, but have it as open to me as possible so I can control everything on it. Gotcha.
Well, if I was going to buy a phone to run an alternative ROM on, the answer would be clear. I'd buy the 6P because that phone is literally, the 6P or the Pixel 2, because both of those phones have an insane amount of popularity behind them. If I wasn't going to do that, if I was going to look for the most flexible operating system that you could run on your phone, have you looked at F-Droid?
Yeah, I actually have it loaded on my Galaxy Note 4 now, yep.
Okay, and that doesn't work on that 6-inch phone that you're trying to get loaded on?
Well, I don't have a 6-inch phone, so I have a 5.5-inch or a 5.7. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, so you're looking to buy a phone,
possibly. Yeah, possibly. Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, the Nexus 6P.
So you said Nexus 6P, the way you'd go. Okay. All right.
Yep. I
appreciate your help.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for calling. I appreciate it. Yeah, the Nexus 6P or the Google Pixel 2. The Google Pixel 2 is going to be a little bit more expensive, which is why I'm going for the 6P. Either one of those phones will be highly well supported. Kevin is calling from Canada. Hey, Kevin, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Yes, hello. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir. How can we help?
So I've got a Dell XPS 13 that I bought with Ubuntu 16.04. Unfortunately, the OS that came with it didn't work very well for me. So I kind of just put it to the side for a while, and then waited till Ubuntu 18.04 came out, and I put that on it, the Mate version. Mm-hmm. And things have been working much better with it overall. I just got a couple small issues with it. One is I'm having a bit of an issue with screen tearing. It's normally not too bad with browsing a web page or something, but when watching a video, it can be pretty noticeable. I'm wondering if you had any suggestions about that.
Yeah, for sure. Does it have a NVIDIA graphics card, or does it have the Intel graphics?
It's the Intel.
Intel graphics. Man, and you're having screen tearing, huh? That is very strange. And you said it was an XPS?
Yeah, it's an XPS 13 9360. It's got a 7000 something i7 in it.
Wow, man! I tell you what, I would run, not walk, to my telephone and I'd give Dell a call because something's wrong with that computer. I've been to the Dell factory, Kevin, and I've seen what they do firsthand. And all of those, the entire XPS series is hardware enabled for Linux. So all of those computers should work right out of the box with Linux with no problems whatsoever. And Dell officially supports that stance. And I've personally loaded Ubuntu 18.04 onto an XPS. I haven't done the 2018 version, but I've done the 2017 version. Chris has done the 2016 and the 2015 version, and zero problems on Ubuntu Mate, on Ubuntu Proper, Ubuntu GNOME, and Integros. So if you're having screen tearing issues, I'd absolutely give Dell a call. If it was an NVIDIA thing, there might be a couple more things we'd look into, but 100% I'd give Dell a call because I think there's something wrong with your computer.
Okay. I always kind of suspected something like that, but it was nothing. It kind of almost worked all the time, so I had to figure out, some way to put this to them that maybe something was broken. But yeah, I'll give them a call. I guess the other thing that I was having trouble with, and it affects this laptop, but I've had it on all kinds of computers that run Linux, is where the mouse cursor speed. I mean, all these distros, well, quite a few of them that I've used at least have, sliders or values that you can change, and some of them work, but a lot of the time they just don't have any effect at all.
I hear you.
The cursor has one speed.
Yeah, I completely hear you. What I've done is I've actually gone to Kubuntu for that exact reason. I actually had a friend that was running Ubuntu Mate, and he had that exact same problem. He wanted to increase the sensitivity, and he wasn't able to do that. We're going to roll an interview for you guys here from Southeast Linux Fest. I think we went a little long, so we might have to chop the end off of it, but here we go. I'm here at Southeast Linux Fest, and Zack Underwood's a good friend of mine. We've had him on the show a couple of times talking about WISPs and Wi-Fi. I mean, the man is a born genius when it comes to networking stuff. Hey, Zack, welcome to the Ask Noah Show.
Thank you.
Hey, I appreciate you taking the time to come here. So I understand that you just recently built a house. And when I say you recently built a, like a lot of people, when they say they recently built a house, they mean, well, they hired a contractor and the contractor built the house. Did you actually build your house? Tell me that. Tell me about that. Did that give you a lot of flexibility in how to do the wiring and stuff?
Oh, yeah. I got a lot of flexibility when doing that. First let me start. The house itself is not a big house. It's only 440 square feet. It is built on a foundation.
Oh, cool. So it is a tiny house.
Technically, yes, it is.
Okay.
It's 22 by 20 feet. I do have 16-foot vaulted ceilings, so it gives a big airy feel, even though it is so small. But it functions for me and my wife. It's me and my wife, 2 dogs and a cat, and 440 square feet.
Wow. So you're building this house out, and knowing you have networking out the wazoo, and I would guess the vast majority, if not exclusively, all of that equipment is Ubiquiti?
Yeah. I was able to fill up an entire 24-port patch panel with wiring from a room the size of most people's master bedroom.
Really?
And I got access points. I got cameras. I've got even cameras out on a pole because I got a long driveway. So they're out by the head of the driveway, so I can see traffic coming in and out without actually having to go outside.
Okay, so talk to me about the security of this, because there's a lot of people out there that would say, well, you put your cameras on the internet, and if the cameras are on the inside of your home now, they could be hacked or compromised, or people could intercept the stream or something like that. Are you worried about any of that?
Not really. I mean, all of my cameras are external. I purposely chose not to have any cameras inside the house. So if it is compromised, so what? You get to see a grassy field with a driveway in the middle.
Yeah, without cameras inside the house, it's not such a big deal, for sure. And those are all running Ubiquiti?
Yeah. I'm using the Ubiquiti cameras with the Ubiquiti MVR. It's good for what you get price wise, and it serves my needs.
Sure. And you've got is it the G3 domes, or it's the pros, or?
I have all of the bullets.
Okay.
I find them more flexible for what I'm using, and I think they are a little better weather rating.
Okay, sounds good. And that's actually what you deployed here at Southeast Linux Fest. You've taken those little cameras, bullet cams, and you've put them in all of the rooms to generate RTMP feeds back to the broadcasting systems.
Exactly. I'm using the camera feed to do the picture-in-picture. And so I built a wooden stand, essentially, out of scrap 2x4s that I had laying around. And that captures the speaker's image and then relays it into the computer for OBS to record the picture-in-picture.
That's really cool. And so are those cameras that are in those rooms, are those eventually going to wind up as additional cameras in your house?
They'll probably be installed in my house within a week.
Really? So where do you not have coverage? I mean, it sounds like you've covered the vast majority of the outside of your house.
My goal is to have every external entrance, whether it's a window or a door to my house, covered with a camera. And then also have the driveway covered, so if something comes down the driveway, I can see it. And when I was building the property, I did have a break-in.
Really?
I had a shipping container where I was keeping materials and tools. And actually, while I was at the Southern California Linux Expo doing the networking, it was broken into. They cut the bolts, and so as a result of that, since I didn't have permanent power, I had to build a solar setup that would run a computer and all the cameras during the construction phase to act as security. Mm-hmm. And so I set up 4 solar panels, a charge controller, and I believe it was 24 AGM car-sized batteries.
And what I like about this is it blends a lot of different spaces. Obviously, it blends the technical space, it blends the maker space, it blends the economic living space. We've not talked about tiny homes on the Ask Noah show before because it's not really a technical concept. But now that I'm thinking about it and I'm hearing you explain it, there are some parallels to be drawn. So, for example, we talk about owning your communication. We talk about owning your technology, owning your software. Why not own your house? I mean, how much of that, do you mind telling me how much you paid for your tiny house?
So the land itself, it's 3.5 acres, about 15 minutes outside of Spartanburg, and I paid $27,000 for it. Mm-hmm. And then the house itself, between materials and what I did contract out was that I contracted the foundation, the driveway, and the drywall out to a contractor, but I did everything else. Mm-hmm. For all of that, I got about $45,000 in the house itself.
Okay.
I did have to take out a loan for the $45,000 part, and using the land as collateral for the loan, and I should have that paid off within 2 years.
Okay. So what I'm saying is in 2 years, you're going to own your own house.
Yes. I'm going to own the studio, which once that's done, I will start construction on the main house, and the studio will go up for rent.
Okay. So this is just actually step 1 in a master plan.
Exactly. My goal is for the rent income to cover 100% of the mortgage of the main house so that I don't have a mortgage payment ever.
Wow. Now that's some forward thinking. How did you learn how to build houses? You're a network engineer by training. I mean, how did you get into building houses?
I was a weird kid growing up. I
believe that.
I watched a lot of This Old House with
really?
Norm Abram and Steve and the other gentlemen on there. And I've been watching, since 92, 93. And just kind of osmosing it in and just retaining it over and over. And also my dad's an engineer, electrical engineer, so I grew up with that engineering mindset.
Sure.
And so it was nothing for me to say, oh yeah, I'm going to frame a house, I'm going to wire a house, I'm going to plumb a house, and put a roof on, put the siding on, put windows on, and have it all inspected by the county. That's a big thing. Is my place is permitted. I went through the permitting process. I went through the inspection process, and I have a legal house. I don't ever have to worry about code enforcement or someone else coming going, this is out of specification. I have my certificate of occupancy from the county saying this is a legitimate home. And
you did that all based off of essentially a TV show.
Pretty much, yes.
You know what's incredible about that, Zach, is I think what that shows us is that this old adage of, oh, did you see that on TV? What, you read it on the internet? Oh, I couldn't possibly, you shouldn't trust everything you see on TV. You shouldn't trust everything you read on the internet. Well, sure, not everything, But there is a lot of really genuine content out there, and so if you're looking at shows that better your life, that teach you something, and you walk away with that, you can turn that into real life savings.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest benefits of watching these type programs is you start to learn terminology.
Yes.
And that really helps when you start to use like the National Electric Code reference manual. It's like 600 pages long, but because you know the key words, you can search that document and find the exact code that applies to you. And so you can make sure that you're following the code so that when the inspector comes, he is not having to try to educate you, which could make him, it could make him angry that, I'm wasting my time with this idiot, and so give you a harder time. But because I was able to look at the NEC code and go, oh yeah, I need to put in these arc fault, ground fault outlets in this location. I can use normal breakers in this location. I was able to save a lot of pain for myself because the inspector wasn't critiquing nearly as hard because he saw that I knew what I was doing, even though I wasn't a licensed contractor.
Talk to me about the networking that you've done inside of your house. So you have cameras, you've filled a 24 port patch bay, but talk to me about the actual networking. What networking gear do you have inside of your house?
So it's all Ubiquiti. I got Ubiquiti PoE switches, cameras, access points.
Access points, plural?
Yeah.
For 400 square feet, man?
So there's one access point on the house. There's an access point inside the container because a steel shipping container is an excellent RF cage. So I have one on top of the container.
Okay, hold on a second. Back up now. You lost me. Steel shipping containers?
Yes, I have a steel shipping container that's on my property. I originally was using it to store construction materials. It was what was broken into.
I see.
But I still have it on my property because it's great storage.
So you bought it?
Yes, I bought it.
Okay.
It was about $2,500 delivered for a 40-foot.
Okay.
And I have the cameras on the container, in the container, on the house, out on the pole. My goal is to, no matter where I go on this 3.5 acre property, I will always have my Wi-Fi.
Now, how did you get, man, you're blowing my mind. How did you get networking out to these poles in the middle of this, in the middle of your yard, essentially, or to this shipping container? I mean, I imagine it doesn't come pre-wired.
No, it doesn't. So what I did is, in the setting up the driveway, I went ahead and trenched conduit in. So I have 1-inch conduit running everywhere on my property, and I pulled fiber. I pulled. I pulled fiber in this conduit.
Some people are happy to get Wi-Fi in the garage. Zach, he runs fiber to his shipping container out in his yard. Oh my God!
My long-term goal with the shipping container is half of it will remain storage. The other half I will build out as a home office with air conditioning, a man door, and fiber. So I'll be able to have 10 gigs. Or higher. I could even be at 40 gigabit. I mean, there's no practical limit in fiber.
Right. Send those print documents real fast back into the house.
Exactly.
No, I don't mean to poke fun. I think that's absolutely incredible. I love people like you that do something and do it so well that you're like, I mean, really, we're joking, we're giving you a hard time, but the reality is that is a 50-year networking job, right?
Yeah.
If not more. I mean, you can't really outrun light.
Yeah, exactly. And what I chose to put in was single mode fiber, which has it's longer range, but it also has historically proven to be more future-proof because they're doing more development work in single mode versus multi-mode.
Okay, so talk to us. What is the difference between single mode and multi-mode fiber for somebody that has terminated some Cat 5 in their house, but they've not really run fiber or worked with it before?
So my understanding is multi-mode is a thicker fiber, it's a lower quality fiber, and it's more designed for within a building, within a data center. Single mode is a much higher quality, more expensive, thinner, and when the light goes down, it's a perfectly smooth all the way through. Where with multi-mode, it basically refracts off the walls of the fiber all the way down. And so with single mode, you get much higher range. Without repeaters, you can go, I think it's 100 kilometers now. With just SFPs that you plug into your switch, you can go 100 kilometers on single mode without amplifiers.
Wow. That's incredible. And so you've buried this all over your property, inside and out?
What I do is I have the conduit come from underground and into the house and into where I have all the networking equipment. So it's not exposed. The fiber is never exposed to anything. It's always in the conduit.
And inside of the house, then you have copper running around?
Yeah. It was a lot easier just to run Cat 6 everywhere.
Cat 6A?
No, it's just normal Cat 6. Everything in there, I'm fine with being gigabit.
Okay.
And that's fine for my needs long term. Now, in the home office, I'll have fiber.
Really? Right to the node?
Oh, yeah. Fiber or DAX, direct attached copper.
Yeah.
And use those for my servers, my desktops, everything I can possibly get 10 gig to, because I want my baseline for anything that's moving any data to be 10 gigs.
And all of those servers are in your basement?
They will be in the container.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they're going to be in the home office?
Yeah. They're going to be in the home office, and they're going to be quiet enough where it's still enjoyable to be in the home office.
So what are you running right now for your like the NVR, and I'm assuming you have a Unify controller?
Yep. Yeah. So actually, I brought one of the servers here. It's a super micro tower server that right now it's stuck up in my unfinished loft.
Okay.
And as soon as the home office is done, it will get moved out there.
And just so we're clear, that is not a quiet machine?
No, it actually is. It is a workstation class super micro.
Oh, okay.
So it is very quiet.
Anything else that you've done that you think is particularly noteworthy, or any plans that you have that, maybe running, fiber out to the forest and having access points on every trees or something?
Well, I think something interesting I did for self this year was the LAN cache. We had a LAN party this year, and one of the games we were playing was Team Fortress 2, which is an 8.5 gig download. Even though we have gigabit to the hotel this year, I still wanted the better performance of having an on-site cache. Mm-hmm. And so there's a GitHub group called Zero Ping Heroes. It's a repo, and they host a LAN party in Europe. And so they developed a lot of these tools for doing LAN parties, LAN caching, and their repo, it works amazing. I think we're now at over 500 gigs saved that was served off the local cache.
Wow. And so what this is doing, for those that maybe don't understand, is that the first time data, so you have mirrored the Ubuntu repos, you've mirrored the Steam software, all this, and so the first time somebody goes to download something off of any of these sources, it pulls it into the network, and then it stores it, caches it on your server, and the next time the next user comes out and says, I want to update my Ubuntu box, as long as you're not on the broadcasting VLAN, it finds that server and it downloads the packages, and then you can update that box, and you haven't actually talked to the outside world a second time.
Yep, that is correct. I am manipulating all DNS requests for Linux repos, Windows updates, Apple updates, Steam, Origin, Blizzard, and I think Riot. So I'm intercepting all the DNSs for those, and if my box has it, it serves it directly. If not, it goes out and fetches it. One thing is I don't break SSL. So if you make an SSL connection, I'm running SNI proxy, and so what it does is it will proxy the request out to the originating server without opening the packet. So I don't break SSL.
And this entire system is running on a Linux server.
Yeah, it's Ubuntu 18.04 with the data storage backend as being ZFS, because I really wanted the caching, because I have access to SSDs and mechanical drives, but not enough SSDs for the storage. So the back end of the storage is mechanical drives with two layer 2 ARCs for ZFS, and then I also have the RAM ARC. And so if the file is requested enough, ZFS just moves it into RAM and starts serving it out of RAM, and RAM will saturate a 10 gig interface.
Wow. So that was Zack Underwood from Southeast Linux Fest. Zach's going to be back on the program. We're actually going to be out at his place in a couple of weeks, and we'll give you the on-the-ground tour, as it were, and we'll report back and maybe even have a video. Next week, I believe it's next week, we're going to be doing an episode on SIP and PBX, and we're also going to tie in a new idea and a new way that you can get on the Ask Noah show to ask questions. So we ask you to tune in next week to hear that. We've also worked out a deal with our friends and the people who provided our broadcast phone systems, Vox Telesis. So if you have placed a call into the Ask Noah show, then you've been facilitated by the equipment that they provided. And they've worked out a special deal for you guys, so you can go to voxtelesis.com/Ask Noah. We'll have a link for you in the show notes, but you're going to want to do that before next week, because next week will be the time to put it into practice. Hey, did you know this show is available as a downloadable podcast? That's right. To subscribe to the feed or download the latest episode, visit podcast.asknoahshow.com. There you'll find not only the latest episode, but all of the articles and materials referenced in this episode. You can get the latest, of course, by following us on Twitter. Use the handle Ask Noah Show. The Ask Noah Show continues next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central. Huge thanks to Vox Telesis for providing our phone systems, Ben, our producer, and Sarah, our call screeners. This hour of the show may be over, but there's plenty more content for you 24/7 at AskNoahShow.com.